Alright, so let's continue, and now we will be working on the next panel of the cart panel that we have, which is this particular region where we will be asking a few details from the customer. So let's get to that. Let's first head back to the browser so that we can figure it out. So currently we have the drawer and all this thing. So the thing is that we will be reusing the same cart panel, like this thing is going to be the same. It's just that the internal content will change depending upon some state. So that means we need to have a state. So let's first create a state. Let's do that. Over here we can use the use state hook. Let's create the state. What should we call it? I guess it's a panel, so maybe like active panel. Depending on that, like we will be showing the respective panel and the function to be offset active panel. And for the default value, so how should we structure it? Because the thing is, these are something like this is the first one, this is the second one. We can either go with a name, but this is like a step thingy, a stepwise. So for that, let's actually keep it as 0, and I'll explain the reason why we are doing this. Like you will kind of understand it by itself, like by your own once we structure it in the way that, like the way that I'm thinking, which would be the most optimal way. Anyway, so now what we need to do is we need to shift the internal content, which includes these two stack component, into a component of its own. So for that, right in the cart directory, let's call it as cart panel is already taken, so I guess maybe just cart would be fine. Let's call it that. I'm pretty sure that the naming could have been better, but you know, I'm not kind of putting too much thought into that thing. Obviously it's not a good, like it's not good to be reckless on that part, but it is what it is. Anyway, so now we have all this thing, like we have the entire thing, the two stacks. So over here, let me just copy the entire thing and paste it at the top so that we do not miss out any of the components that we are using, and we can just see which one we are not using, which is drawer in this case. And obviously we cannot have two components sitting adjacent, like on the root level. So let's wrap them up within fragments in this way. So if we do that, and now we don't need this, as well as let's remove the components which we are not using. So now let's import this cart that we just created, this component. And now what we can do is we can have an array of components outside the component, because this is something which would not change, so it's much better to have it outside. So over here we will be naming it as panels, because it's an array of components and the order in which we add them is important. So the first one is cart and the next one would obviously be the other one. But for now what we can do is right over here within this stack we can let's actually do one thing over here. Let's create panel, and the panels, the active panel, that's the one that we care about. So this thing we can just place it in such a way. How about that? Let's see. So if I refresh, we should be seeing the same thing, obviously, because we didn't really change anything in terms of the structure, and there it is. So that's beautiful. So now let's work on the other one. So over here let's create a new file and let's name it as what should we enter details. Let's just keep it as simple as possible. So yeah, that would be it. And let's see the structure of this one. Okay, so again we'll have to structure it a bit similar to what we did over here, as in this part should be grouped together and this one should be grouped like grouped together, like separate, so that we can make use of that justify content so that this thing sticks at the bottom. Anyway, so let's structure it out. Let's see what we did over here. I'm gonna copy this thing and let's use fragments firstly, and now let's use the stack within which we can place this typography, making sure that we import the components obviously. From the core actually. 1 second. And the thing is that we also need to have this back button. Sorry about that. Again, cracky voice, dry throat. Anyway, so this back button that I have and this enter details, so they need to sit next to each other. So I'm gonna wrap them in a stack of its own, and let's set the direction to be of row and the spacing to be of 2. So now let's import the icon from the icon materials package, and the name of it should be back arrow icons material, and we have arrow back, that's what it is. Let's import it. So over here within the stack, we can first place the icon button to make that clickable sort of feel, to give it that feel. And now we can just place in the back arrow. Let's reduce the size of it so that it's not taking too much space, like too much clickable portion space. And now I guess we can save it. So this one would be sort of like the top bar, let's just call that. Again, terrible naming, I admit that. So over here now let's import the enter details. Very bad name, no. And we can just place it in the panels. So for now let's change this value to be of 1, which would mean that we will be using this, like we will be rendering this particular component. And if we have a look, there it is, beautiful. Obviously we need to change the text and it should be enter details. So I can already suspect my system is lagging, so I'm gonna again cut the video and let's continue with the same thing in the next one. Thank you for watching.